Okay, well, let's go to the other side of it, not cleaning. The last one I heard was in the level of the 6,000 rounds in a high power. I don't know exactly what it was. A 260 Remington is most likely. It was a roo shooter. So guys that shoot at the 100 to 300 yards, nighttime sort of shooting, headshots only is what they do. That is a very specific thing because they, in the way of the culling of those animals, both the meat and the hide are used in that sort of stuff. So they really are, only a small head. They really have that's the largest, really in the way of kill shot. You're a 2-inch group, and at the 200, 250, 300 yards at night time, that's a fair bit of a shot. A rifle has to be accurate. But I've certainly heard it at 3,000 and 4,000 and up there, lots and lots of rounds. And quite commonly in those guys, no, they don't clean. I've also heard stories of those coming in where those barrels have got 2/3 of the rifling that are gone. Completely gone. The rifling's worn off, and it's just the last bit of where the rifling is actually getting the spin and hooking it up, and how that all works I really don't know, but it is working to a level. Now, the comment and the reason for that is I'm not suggesting that's what you should do. That's what you can get away with, is what I suppose is what I'm saying. And this moves in from breaking in a barrel. Guys that don't want to break in a barrel, don't use it. Just shoot it. If it's no good, it's no good. If it's good, it's good. Just carry on and use it from there. Once again, not something I'd recommend, but yes, it would work. And listen, I have been there and done that. In truth of point, this rifle here, which started just as a Howe 1500, before the chassis, before this barrel, before the other bits and pieces, it started with me learning or starting to stretch out a rifle into long range stuff. I'd done very little in the way of cleaning or any of that sort of stuff previously. I'd only cleaned things that were dirty or rusty or whatever it was, or had dust in them because they'd been in the cupboard for years with what I was doing. And I got this one and I decided I was going to learn how to shoot. I was trying to shoot the 55 grain Winchester ammo, so factory ammo, out to 800 yards, which wasn't with a Nikon Sterling scope, wasn't a great setup of what it was actually doing. And it went through that process of where I was shooting box after box of ammo while I was learning, with no cleaning, no running in, no anything. Now the reason I mention that isn't because that's what I would recommend to do by any means. I mention that because it was probably coming up into 1,000 rounds before I really started to dial things in and make sense of things. I'd switched over to my loads, which for this was a 1 in 10 twist, 24-inch barrel, and I switched over to a 95 grain bullet that I found I could make work in this thing, and everything started to work. I started to stretch. I shot that combination with this rifle at to 2,000 meters accurately, and the last shot I ever did there with this rifle, the last 5-shot group was on an egg at 1,100 yards, and I got that. And that was up at around I wasn't keeping track of things properly, but I estimate between 2,500 rounds and 3,000 rounds. And I pulled the barrel out, not because it was worn out, not because it was doing anything wrong, because I wanted to try an improved one, and I wanted to go to this 27-inch barrel because I wanted some more speed and I wanted more twist, which was my big key. It was only 1 in 10 twist. I've come down to a 1 in 8 twist, and I'm able to run my 1 in 9 grain bullets. So it's a better combination like it is, but that barrel was changed not because it was broken, not because not running in or all the bad things I'd done in theory at the beginning had hurt it at all. It was because I wanted something different. And I still have that barrel, I could put it back. Now I mention that not as an advisory thing as what you should do. I mention it more as there is a logic to guys saying, well, I don't bother. I don't bother with doing any of that, don't bother with any cleaning. Well, it didn't hurt me a lot either. But I would suggest, and the real thing rather than not cleaning is this equilibrium thing I mentioned, which is actually talking about the fact of, and there's a sound logic to go with this as well, is if you need fouling to get the copper and the carbon laid into your barrel, what's wrong with getting it to a point where it stays there and it stays there all the time? So like I said, if you just shot 100 rounds and your last shot was just as accurate as you want, why not leave it there, and then your next shot, when you start again, will be there, and then you can carry on. And if the barrel gets to the point where it's just pushing out what it's putting in, and that's what happens every time. So it always cleans itself, always dirties itself, always cleans itself, always dirties itself, always cleans itself, always dirties itself, and that stays at the same level. Why wouldn't that stay in that place? And to be truthful, the more I ask, the more I go into that, there's nothing really to say that that isn't the case. There's nothing really to say that a world championship couldn't be won by someone who cleans their barrel that way. They don't, because like I said, they're doing everything they can, and why would you not clean something if you could clean something? Why would you take the chance over here rather than do it to know where you are here? So there's a simple logic to it, but the truth of it is, it isn't as clear and simple as one is right, one is wrong. There is places where barrels do get dirty, and I suppose that's another sort. That's sort of in between these two. Here's the guys that will say, I shoot, and this is not uncommon, this is probably the majority, I shoot until the barrel loses accuracy and then I clean. Now, I haven't seen that in my experience. I haven't seen it go down that road, but there is a logic to the fact that if it's constantly putting a little bit down, to a degree that a little bit down, so it's putting in a little bit more than it's taking out, is that you'll get to a point where that doesn't hurt things, doesn't hurt things, doesn't hurt things, doesn't hurt things until it does. And then you've got to clean it. So to run a competition like that wouldn't make much sense. If you don't know where you're at, then that wouldn't make much sense. If you are going to ultimately clean this, why wouldn't you clean it to start off with? But there's some people that do, and I presume that's a case of it doesn't get erratic enough, fast enough, or whatever it is. My question, I suppose, what I want to point out is, yes, some people will do that. I'll shoot it until it starts to lose accuracy, and then I'll clean it. There's other guys that, and nowadays with the availability of very good quality bore scopes, the endoscope and things like that, things where you can put a camera down your bore and look at things, that are looking at it and then going with, okay, it's getting too dirty, I've got to clean it. And listen, not a terrible way to do it by any means. There's a lot more attached to bore scopes, and to be truthful, they are more the gun industry's problem than they are the gun industry's advantage, with them being more available, and I'll explain that a little bit. But yes, there's a logic to that. You start to see excess copper build up, you start to see things. If you know what you're looking at, then yes, you could do it that way as well. If you're getting a copper build up, if you're getting too much carbon build up, if you're getting something going on like that does need cleaning periodically, now that may simply be your load, your powder, that's what it does. That may be your barrel, and that's what it does. That may be your bullets and what that does. That probably and generally, and if you listen and talk to all people, once you start to run too hot, too much speed, too much of something, then you'll tend to get to that place. And that might be the cleaning it is probably necessary. You've got too much copper in the barrel. You've got to make it, not only clean it, but I'd be suggesting making a change. Now, if it's a situation you really can do 200 rounds and then you've got to clean it and it comes back to that same place and it trucks along, well, there's nothing wrong with that way of doing it, obviously. But there's something going on with that equation. So I suppose coming back from the cleaning to the almost not cleaning, which is more where I sit, which is running on the fact that you're going to run equilibrium. So you run in your barrel, and the simple process I do of running in a barrel is one shot and then put a patch to it. So a wet patch and a dry patch. And you see how much gunk comes out. There's some barrels where they're very black and it takes 5 patches and 3 oily patches and 6 dry patches to get it back to where it's moderately clean. There's only a little bit on it before I shoot again. In most cases nowadays, that's one patch, and it's done. And then if that was like that for the first shot, then I'll shoot, depends on the barrel, depends on how fast I run the round, that sort of stuff, but sometimes I'll do 2, sometimes I'll do 5. And then I'll do that same thing again. Most barrels nowadays, and most good barrels, and most factory barrels, to be truthful, are lapped or in a form where they're ready to shoot, as long as, and obviously I didn't say this, but if you've got a new barrel, no matter what it is, run something through it, look through it, run something through it, make sure there's no swarf in it, make sure there's nothing weird. And then that first shot, as I said, this rifle as a baby, I didn't do it. My real reason to suggest to do a run-in of some form is so you know. So when you shoot it, you know, you've got more information. It's your rifle, you know. You need to have cleaning stuff in some form or other anyway. For the majority of us, you need some way of being able to clean through there. So it's simply a case of taking to the range and take a shot, pull a bolt, run a rod through it, check it. And if that's really dirty, then I'll do one shot until that comes up okay. And then I'll, how fast it is, go to 5 shots or go to 10 shots or 20 shots or whatever it is, and then it just goes to a normal clean. Generally nowadays, I don't feel I'm doing a damn thing, to be truthful, but I have the knowledge of what's going on. It's like checking my oil in the car, you know. Yes, it's probably right, there's no oil light on, but I'd much rather know. And for the first little while to check your oil occasionally and see what's going, it's what I do. It's the same with, and that is the thing I can check. You're obviously looking at your primers and you're looking at your brass and you're looking at bits and pieces of what your load's doing. But what your barrel's doing, you don't really know. It might be grouping really well, but that doesn't tell you everything. I have had one just recently, which was the 28 Muzzle, which is the first one I've seen in a long while that had some copper build up in the end of it. Now, it was a reasonably tight barrel. I'm starting to run pretty good speed, getting up into over 3,200 feet per second with 190 gram projectiles. But my honest thing is I will clean that. Of the very rare times I will clean that copper out, and I will go through the process of it. That may have been just the running process. It's only shot 40 rounds, and it may be about that, and it may be that I'm starting to expand the bullets and that's starting to spin them too fast. Don't know, don't think so, don't stress about it. It was grouping really well, but it's part of looking. And I suppose that moves into the bit, we're slowly going into what I do, but the bit of what the bore scope conversation. Bore scopes, yes, I think are a valuable tool, but like I said, they're probably the bane of some gunsmiths and barrel builders' existence. Without the knowledge, it's very hard to see something. And I suppose the main caveat I put under bore scope is you will be absolutely amazed how terrible some really good barrels look. And I shouldn't say really good barrels in the fashion of the really good barrel means that everything looks beautiful, it shoots beautiful, and it's wonderful. They're actually called hummers, but that's actually a name for just a barrel that does everything well by nature, and they're very rare creatures that the bench rest world knows of and target shooted wells. But what I'm actually talking about there is if everything looks really good and it shoots really good, then that's a really good barrel. You can have a barrel that shoots really well, does everything really well, but when you look inside it, this is probably more commonly found in a factory barrel or in a factory rifle, but happens all over the place where there can be some really ugly little funny little chatter marks, little pit marks, little funny little marks of how the rifling's uneven. Something happened weird in there that to the layman is, or the professional looks, oh my God, it's terrible, but actually shoots really well. And what have you got it for? Have you got the picture, you're using it to showcase the rifling? No, it's about shooting. So what that means is that when you're looking for a problem, which isn't as normally, largely the nut behind the butt that problem is, but when everything else is sorted out and you're looking for a problem and that's in, then yes, the barrel, you can spot it in that sort of place. For checking for cleaning and seeing how well you're cleaning, yes, that's a place. For checking for how what the fouling's going, like copper, that sort of stuff, yes, that's a place. But if you've got a rifle that's fundamentally doing everything right and you can see something funny in the barrel, that's bad for everybody, because it's bad for you because you've just lost confidence in your rifle. It's bad for the people trying to deal with it because there's nothing wrong with this, but that barrel, there's going to be an argument or someone trying to get a new barrel or having to give a new barrel to someone because they can see something in their barrel. I would liken it back to my car world of there's times where a car's been absolutely wonderful and what they want is an extra little piece, a set of gauges. That's easy enough, isn't it? A set of gauges put on to make it look nice. And all of a sudden that oil pressure gauge isn't doing what I thought it was doing. That oil pressure gauge is running too low in these places, or it's running too high, or it's moving around, or whatever that gauge is, that temperature gauge or whatever it is. All of a sudden you have a gauge problem. It's not that anything is wrong whatsoever, it's that people can see something and then they worry about it, and then it becomes a problem because they can see it. So bore scopes are a little bit the same place. The advice would be, as said, barrels can look a lot worse than they are by some little feature, some little look, some not understanding what you're looking at, that sort of stuff. So don't overthink that process, use that tool appropriately, but yeah, that gets a little complicated. Anyway, I think that's enough of the equilibrium side of things. I think you've sort of got that to a place where it sort of makes sense. Let me get into what I do.